It's an ordinary day. A young high school boy named Takashi is kind of depressed because his childhood crush, Rei, who once promised to marry him, has grown distant. Even though they see each other every day, it's like she's so far away. For some reason, she also flunked a grade, which is why they aren't even in the same class grade anymore. A pink-haired named Seiya Takagi comes up and starts insulting him by spamming the word stupid, though he couldn't care less about her at that moment. But then something happens that sways his attention. At the school gate, there's an odd individual trying to get through. A group of teachers are telling him off. A brawny one even tries to push him away. But when he gets bitten, he turns into a violent undead and attacks the other teachers, hence in turn infecting them of this zombie virus as well. Takashi saw everything, and he knew that things are going to get quite rowdy from here on out. He quickly rushes to Rei and tells her to leave with him, though since he didn't exactly explain the situation, she talks back and doesn't listen. But when Takashi slaps her, suddenly both her and her boyfriend Hisashi start listening. Meanwhile, the situation is announced to the entire school and panic follows. Students are kicking and pushing each other as they desperately try to escape the school. Soon enough, the majority of these students get infected, and the scene becomes a nightmare. Some push their friends right in front of those zombies, while some are utterly devastated. Seeing the situation, Takashi, Rei, and Hisashi get to the roof, and from there they witness the brutal state of their city. Special forces are also seen flying in the distance. Though the trio was confronted by a zombie while on the way to the roof, and in an attempt to protect Rei, Hisashi ended up getting bitten. Takashi killed that zombie by smashing its head with a bat, but Hisashi has already started feeling sick. He asks Takashi to push him over the edge, so at least he can die as a human. While Rei tries to keep Takashi from killing him, Hisashi becomes a zombie. Takashi instantly kills him with that bat before he could hurt Rei. That was kinda painful for Takashi because the zombie he killed used to be his best friend. Rei blames him and cries, but eventually apologizes and asks Takashi to be with her. And it was on this day that Takashi embraced the girl he loved for the first time in forever. That pink-haired girl named Seiya joins Takashi's buddy, Hirano, as they desperately evade zombies. But whenever Hirano suggests an idea, Seiya immediately shuts it down and lets him know how stupid he is. Rei gets through to her dad using Takashi's phone, but he informs them of the complete and utter chaos taking place everywhere, and tells them to get out of there. And so the two start moving. Back in the nurse's office, the stunning school nurse named Shizuka is saved by the silent beauty named Saiko. She's the president of the Kenjo Club and therefore can handle the zombies no problem. By this point, Takashi and Rei have come up with a plan that involves using the water hose. They use the water to restrict the zombies and make their escape from the rooftop. On their way, Rei asks him about their next destination, to which Takashi replies they'll go back to their homes to meet their families and of course help others survive along the way. The part about getting to their families is especially important in Takashi's case because his mother is an elementary school teacher, so she's most likely in a similar situation. Now, while Seiya and Hirano are using the stuff they found in the workshop to evade the zombies, Seiya realizes something crucial. The zombies only respond to sound and cannot see. Meanwhile, Saiko and Shizuka have to get the car keys from the staff room. Seiya, on the other hand, just used a drill to wreck a zombie's head and is sort of terrified. And that's when Takashi, Rei, Saiko, and Shizuka come running into the scene. Seiya tries putting up a front but ends up crying. Later, all 6 of them contemplate a way to escape. They'll hoard a bus and flee the school. Their goal is to first make sure their families are alright, and then secure a safe shelter. Though it certainly doesn't help their morale when they realize how the zombie epidemic has spread across the entire world. Anyways, they soon come across another group of survivors and let them join. And this is where Takashi tries testing Seiya's hypothesis. He bravely walks into a herd of zombies while making little to no sound. And it turns out Seiya was right. The zombies only respond to sound. They all silently take their steps, but a dork ends up hitting his weapon, in turn making the loudest sound possible. Suddenly all these zombies come rushing in. Of course they fight and there are a few sacrifices, but they pull through. Then they encounter yet another group of survivors, and this one is being led by a suspicious teacher named Mr. Shido. Rei has a bad feeling about this and doesn't want him to join them, but they all come together anyway and finally reach the bus. Here, a scuffle takes place and Mr. Shido proposes that they appoint a leader. Or to be more precise, they appoint him as the leader. Rei seriously doesn't like this and decides to leave the bus. Takashi immediately follows after her, but suddenly a bus full of zombies comes crashing in between them and the bus, thus separating them both. Takashi proposes to the other 4 that the 2 of them will rendezvous later and that they should go on ahead. The two of them run away from the explosion and plunder a bike from a zombie to get away from the scene. As he drives the bike, Takashi recalls how this nightmare began. Eventually, they come across a police car and get themselves a gun and a baton, and later stop at a gas station to get the tank refilled. Takashi leaves Rei for a couple of moments to go and operate the gas station until he hears her screaming and immediately runs back. Rei has been taken hostage by a survivor. He starts mocking Takashi. Takashi ends up shooting him in the arm to free Rei, and then when Rei is furious about the situation, Takashi tells her that they should just leave. The noise from that guy's screams has already attracted a lot of attention. The zombies will take care of that guy. The following day, the duel keeps moving forward as Takashi reflects on how, even though it's only been a day since the zombie outbreak, he's already become the cause of someone's death. Oh well, as for the situation, there's an exceptional sniper named Rika Minami at the Kansai airport who has been sniping zombies left and right. She and her fellows are helping the civilians evacuate. Back at the bus, Shido has started a cult. Seiya, Rei, Shizuka, and of course Hirano decide to leave them, though not before Hirano fully expressed his pent-up anger for the teacher. All four of them head toward the Onbetsu Bridge, but end up getting cornered by zombies. Though that's when Takashi and Rei come rushing in on their bike and help them with the situation. The zombies are taken care of within a few moments, and the six of them are finally together again. Now, since they need shelter for the night, Shizuka mentions her friend Rika's apartment. They get there, and it looks like her friend has left a Humvee parked right outside. There are still some zombies lurking around the building, so they take care of them before securing the shelter for the night and finally get some peace of mind. When they turn on the TV to see the situation, they witness a collision between the police and a group of fools who believe that this epidemic is a conspiracy constructed by the US and Japanese government. The situation just keeps getting more and more hopeless. They eventually turn off the TV, but that's when a drunk Shizuka with nothing but a towel on her body starts teasing both Takashi and Hirano. But it's not just her either. All the girls look quite alluring. Rei and Takashi lash out but eventually warm up to each other and even share a kiss. What kept them from going beyond was a dog's bark and the upcoming zombie squads because of that barking noise. They look from the veranda as people continue to get infected. It's a tough dilemma because, as Sayako said, they can't use the rifles to make any more noise either. One instance is purely depressing because it's just the father and his little daughter trying to find shelter. He knocks at someone's door and desperately requests them to at least let his daughter Alice inside. And after continuous pestering, they finally open the door, only to stab him in the chest and leave him outside to die. The paranoia was pretty real. Alice cries outside that house as her father gradually loses his life, and her screams end up attracting zombies. Seeing this, Hirano uses his extraordinary sniping skills to take the zombies out from the veranda. The man just couldn't leave the little girl alone. Takashi and the girls are left with no choice but to prepare to leave this place, while he dashes on his bike to rescue Alice. They all load up the stuff on the Humvee and get ready. Takashi, on the other hand, places a flower on Alice's father's chest to mourn for her loss and also lets her cry her heart out. By this point, the entire street is filled with zombies and they can no longer use the apartment. Takashi, Alice, and a little dog walk on top of the fence to avoid getting bitten until they reach that Humvee. Fortunately, Saiko and the others come to the rescue instead. Takashi jumps on the Humvee together with Alice and that little dog. And just like that, they all traverse through the river to the other side. Luckily, there aren't any zombies in sight, or civilians for that matter, which gives them the luxury of checking out and getting familiar with their new weapons. But since the girls were still in some pretty seductive nightwear, Shizuka presents a bunch of her friends' clothes that they can now wear. So just like that, the girls change into these clothes and equip themselves with weapons. It's full-on military mode. Their next checkpoint was Seiya's residence, because it happened to be the closest. But as they were on their way, a bunch of zombies stood in their way. But that wasn't a problem because the Humvee could easily run them over. However, at one point they reached a dead end and just had to push the brakes. Rei, who was on top of the Humvee together with Takashi, couldn't handle the recoil of the brake and fell off of the vehicle. They start using their new weapons to take care of the nearby zombies. Seiya was kind of cowardly at first, but even she comes out of the Humvee and starts shooting. However, the number of zombies was just too much, so both Takashi and Saiko decide to lead them away by making them chase after themselves. And just in the nick of time, someone shows up with armed forces and takes care of the zombies that were left behind, hence, in turn, saving the day. The person was Seiya's mother herself. Still, Takashi and Saiko were already separated, so they decide to get to Seiya's house on their own. The two of them come across a badass jeep and run over zombies, but going through the river caused Saiko to get all wet. This was getting way too naughty and obviously bad for her health, so she changes into all black clothes and flusters the living daylights out of her boy. Later, they abandon the jeep at a fountain and engage in combat with the nearby zombies. But When she faces zombified children, her body freezes, and Takashi has to sweep in to help her out of that situation. They both take shelter in a nearby shrine, where Seiko shares a story from her past. 4 years ago, a man tried to force himself onto her when she flipped out and almost murdered the guy. Furthermore, she enjoyed it. Now that she reminisces about it, she seems guilty and all, but Takashi comes forth, kisses her, and then the following day, when she ends up freezing in front of the zombies yet again, Takashi grabs her badonkers with all his might and drops wisdom bombs on her, telling her that she should embrace her dark side if it means to continue living. That restores her fighting spirit back to 100%, and from there on out, Seiko completely wrecks all of those zombies. And then later, they finally reach Seiya's house. Anyways, it's been a day since they arrived here, and it looks like it's about time that they decide if they want to stay here or venture out yet again. Takashi likes the idea of staying here and becoming a part of her father's territory. But Seiya lashes out. She's mad at her parents, especially her father, who thought she had died in that school incident and didn't actually try to search for her. This causes Takashi to lash back at her because, unlike them, she's lucky. She knows her parents are alive. And as this is going on, her father Suichiro arrives in the vicinity, and he puts up an execution of one of his zombified friends in front of his people. Later, Hirano is ganged up upon by Seiya's father's men, and they ask him to surrender his weapons to them, but he simply doesn't yield. Eventually, her father shows up and asks him the extent of his ability. This is where the gang intrudes and backs him up, especially Seiya, who mocks her father by saying that, unlike him, this man, Koda Hirano, was actually protecting her all this time. Remember that obnoxious teacher Shido from before? Well, by this point, he's gaslighted the students into seeing themselves as their own salvation. The female students are spamming a Hegiofaces for some reason. Anyway, now they're on their way to come join Seiya's father's estate. Meanwhile, a certain group of people at the estate think that Seiya's father is spouting nonsense. It's all for the sake of controlling them. The infected ones can definitely be cured. Seiya, Hirano, and Takashi try talking some sense into them, but it doesn't work. They have fundamentally deluded themselves. Saiko, on the other hand, is sitting right in front of Suichiro as he presents her with a rare katana. Looks like Saiko's father taught him the art of swordsmanship, and now he's repaying his master's daughter. Later, Rei is leaning on Takashi's arm while sitting on the bed. Takashi is getting kind of insecure, but when Rei tells him that she's ready to do anything for him, he starts feeling better. Takashi wanted to kiss and do stuff, but it looks like Rei's injuries still hadn't healed. So she leaves to have Shizuka-sensei take a look. Later, Takashi, Rei, and Saiko get ready to leave. They'll come back after meeting up with their parents within 2 days. Meanwhile, Shido had used a female student's charm to get the attention of security, and eventually sneaked his way into the Takagi estate. It was easy because he himself was a member of the Senator Shido's family. But seeing him makes Rei's blood boil like crazy, and she instantly dashes in to attack him. And this is where everything becomes clear. Why does Rei bear such hostility towards this trash? Looks like the reason Rei had to repeat a grade was because Shido's father told him to. All because she was the daughter of a prominent police officer who stood in the way of Shido's father's politics. Even Soichiro enters the chat. Ultimately, the choice was in Rei's hands. Shido's life was in her hands, though she realizes that this man isn't even worth killing. She's kicked out of the estate. He takes his students and flees the scene, pathetically. Meanwhile, the 2 US Navy officers launch nukes based on the president's final orders. The impact of these nukes can be seen even by the astronauts present on a space station. Rika states from that here on out, nights will be truly dark. She's even talking to her dear friend Shizuka, but their call is cut short, all because of the electromagnetic pulse resulting from those nuclear explosions. The computers and other electronic devices stop working as well. Shido was driving the bus and he ends up crashing into one of the barriers outside Takagi Estate. This not only spells out the doom of him and his followers, but the Takagi Estate also wasn't safe anymore. Eventually, they tear apart the gate and come through. A fire takes place and the entire Takagi estate starts burning. The only option left is for them to escape their neighbor's estate. Suichiro tells Takashi and the others to escape. They'll manage something about themselves. Seiya doesn't like the idea of parting ways, but her mother slaps some sense into her. As it turns out, both her and Suichiro have a duty to perform. So after an emotional farewell, the gang goes to the garage to keep the zombies at bay until the Humvee gets fixed, and then flee the scene. Just like that, they blitz out of the estate and into the wild yet again. The next step in their journey was searching for his and Rei's parents. And that's the end of the video. This anime always reminded me of those old school, incredibly gory horror movies that also have, tons of sexual references and stuff, because the fan service in this show is... oh boy! You can't miss it. 9%, it's a lot of the show. And it's also incredibly gory. Give it a watch if you like that sort of stuff. It's pretty entertaining, to say the very least. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one.
And I'm pretty sure that you are.